I did volunteer for the Navy because I wanted to get, there was a special program that the Navy had begun, which really amounted to a small midshipman school, a small Annapolis. And in order to get into that program, I had to volunteer. Had I been drafted, I couldn't have gotten into it. So I volunteered soon after my 18th birthday. It was pretty tough academically. The load was heavier than a normal college student would take. When I was in college, I would enroll, when I was in college out here, Teachers College, I'd enroll in 17 hours. But in the Navy, I was enrolled in always 21. They gave us courses like seamanship, communication, the airplane identification, ship identification, damage control, and all that sort of stuff. It was strictly classroom work. And there's no such thing as cutting class. That's a good way to be pulled out of the program and dropped. In fact, while I was in midshipman school at Notre Dame, when I first started out, there were about 1,400 men there, and a little over 800 graduated. The others had washed out. I went across the hall one morning, the morning of graduation, and the fellow over there was crying. And I thought, well, maybe he's had a death in the family. So I asked his roommate, I said, what happened? He said he'd just been told that he was washed out. Had to turn in that new uniform and go to boot camp. I was assigned to a ship. This is my ship here. That's the USS Charles Carroll, APA 28. That's an assault transport that is used mainly for invasions. And we carried we carried landing craft. LCVP is the technical name of them, and LSMs, LCMs. Some people call them Higgins boats. It was in the Pacific area. He was part of the amphibious forces. I was, they said I was a boat officer. I really hadn't had any training to be a boat officer. I had a number of duties when I was first assigned to it. I stood what they called junior officer of the deck watches. And I also worked in decoding. Messages that came to the ship were monitored by a radioman, and everything was coded. And I'd get the information from them. They'd type it up, and it made no sense. It's just a bunch of words. But we had a decoding machine, and I would type that into the machine, and then the real message would come out. So I did that. I also worked in the radar room some, which I enjoyed. I was also a mail censor. In World War II, mail was censored if you were overseas or on a ship. If they said something they weren't supposed to, I took the scissors and cut it out. And sometimes it'd be so much information there that shouldn't have been there, you'd have to send it back and tell them to rewrite their letter. They were telling things they weren't allowed to tell. I didn't particularly like that job. I didn't like the idea of reading someone else's mail, but it had to be done. I was in real good shape. In fact, after I went aboard ship, our skipper decided that the men needed some physical training. I led my people in my division in physical training, and I think they laughed up their sleeves. He won't be able to do this. But I demonstrated everything, and I did it with them. They were puffing, and when I got through with them. In Okinawa, the invasion was on April 1st, 1945. That was, of course, April Fool's Day. Easter Sunday also. But it's a little different from the normal Easters that we have here. On the morning of the invasion, I came topside, and the first thing I saw was a Japanese plane being shot out of the air. Landed, pilot didn't eject, so it crashed in the ocean and burned. And my first thought was, somebody just died. But I was glad that ship, that boat, that plane was gone, because that's one plane we didn't have to worry about anymore. I was in one of the LCVPs with a load of Marines. We had Marines for the Okinawa invasion. And we took the Marines to the beach. And as I said earlier, we were having to watch out for suicide planes because they were after the transports. And some of them were trying to get through, hopefully. Luckily, none of them did get through to our ship. Now, they did get through to some other ships. I have this picture of Ernie Pyle, who was a famous war correspondent. He was called the GI's war correspondent. He had been in a number of invasions in Europe, and he was on our ship for the invasion of Okinawa. And a boat crew and I took him ashore on April the 4th. And he was killed 2 weeks later. A photographer took that picture, and he autographed it for me the day before I took him ashore. It was signed on April the 3rd. I was very proud to get that picture. After the war was over, I made several trips. Our ship made several trips to the Far East, bringing people back who were being separated from the service. In fact, I guess we made 7 round trips across the Pacific Ocean. I went to places like the Philippines, China, Japan. After we got back from that trip, we came to San Pedro, California. That's where I left the ship. I was transferred from the ship to Terminal Island, which was a Navy intake station. And I stayed there 2 or 3 nights, waiting for transportation to Millington, Tennessee, where I would be separated. And I couldn't understand why they were having to wait so long, because the trains were running every day. But the Navy didn't want me riding in a coach. They wanted me to have a Pullman. So I was waiting until they could get a reservation for a Pullman. 20 months. That was my home for 20 months. So when you live with a bunch of people that long, you get to know some of them pretty well. You make some close friends. And 2 or 3 of them I still have contact with.
That's great.
They live in other states. I didn't know anyone on the ship from Arkansas. The ship, we've had reunions. And I went to my first reunion down in Mobile, Alabama, and made an reacquaintance with a lot of these people, and went to several reunions after that. Well, I would hope that people who read some of these and see some of these interviews would have a better appreciation of what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation.